Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about normalizing failures and setbacks. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is a thinker. And I have Alice here who's going to help us think about this in another light so that we can really think about this. So, with that being said, thank you so much, Alice, for coming onto my show and sharing your time and your perspective with me. So, let's go ahead and dive right in. What does normalizing failures and setbacks make you think about?
First, thanks so much for having me on the show, Mitzi. I'm excited to be here and excited to be talking about this topic that is near and dear to my heart because we've all experienced setbacks and
Yeah,
failures at some point. It's impossible to go through life without it. But I think the challenge is really how you bounce back from it, how you learn from those experiences. And
absolutely.
how you recover from that is really what can set you up for success. And what I like to tell people, honestly, is that it's hard to find success without experiencing failures. Failures actually lead to success. Um, because failures and setbacks is how you learn. And that's what can bring you to success. So for me, a quick introduction about me. I am a career clarity coach, and I call myself a expert box checker. I've based on my background and resume, and if you ever see it, you would think that I have achieved everything. I'm an overachiever, and I went to Ivy League schools. I've worked at Fortune 500 companies. But I've also experienced my fair share of setbacks and failures, despite such a long list of brand names on my resume.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand that. And I'm glad that you were honest about how, despite how it looks on paper, I still deal with setbacks. And I think that's something that people forget because people think if you go to the Ivy League school, if you get the straight A's, if you do the right thing, you follow your parents' rules, you get the job, you get the internship, you do all the steps, and it's like you're supposed to have success and happiness and green lights the whole entire time. And it's just like, that's not always the case. You know what I mean? Life is never going to give you green lights the whole entire way. There's always going to be some hiccups, some red lights, some orange lights to slow you down. And I loved when you said it's about how you come back and the recovery process of after you have the failure. And I think that is such a big key component for people to really think about. Oh my goodness, the recovery process because it's like kind of like a grieving, am I right? Like we kind of feel
Yeah,
like we're
definitely.
grieving because we got this setback or we failed, and now we're just like, now what? So, what are some recovery ways that you learned?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest failures that I feel like I've experienced in my career is going through layoffs. And I know that there's a lot of people who have gone through these experiences as well, especially in over the last year or two.
Yeah.
And so I first experienced layoffs during the 2008 2009 financial crisis when I was working in finance. At the time, I personally didn't get laid off, but I saw my friends getting laid off. And at the time, I was so grateful to still have a job. Um,
Yeah.
and I could see the impact of that, but I didn't experience that myself until much later when I was working at Google after business school. And I had been at Google for 4 years. And I worked my ass off there. So I worked really hard. I worked sometimes nights, weekends, definitely checked my email on
Yeah.
vacation, feeling like I always had to check in and work as hard as I could. But despite all this, I could never get promoted. I went through 4 years without promotion, and I really felt like I kept hitting a ceiling
Yeah.
of where I could go. And surprisingly, after 4 years of working really hard, I got laid off because management team decided that to reorg the team and my team was no longer needed. And that was
Mm.
such a huge shock to me. It was my very first time experiencing actually getting laid off, even though I had seen that. And I was So I went through it is like a grieving process. It's like the 6 or 7 steps of grief where I was
Mhm.
angry. I was thinking like, oh, I spent so much time working so hard and nothing's come out of that. And now I have no job. And what
Mhm.
what am I supposed to do next? I had been working. I had been at the time working at one of the best companies to work for,
Yeah.
and where am I supposed to go next? And so going through all those steps of feeling the grief and really sitting with those feelings and then trying to think about, okay, what am I going to do next? And
Yeah.
for me, at the time, I think people really thought I was crazy because even though I was getting laid off from Google from my specific team, I had that choice to either stay within the company and find another role or team within the company, or I
Uh-huh.
could take the severance package. I decided to leave the company and take the severance package. Everyone else that had been laid off with me all stayed with the company. And at the time, people were like, "Why are you leaving such a good company? What? You're crazy."
Yeah.
And not only did I leave the company, but I also left without having another job lined up. So I decided I wanted to take some time off to really think about what I wanted, really
Yeah.
explore my interests and passions, and my parents were like, how can you leave a job without having another one lined up? And
Yeah.
people were saying, oh, it's bad, it's going to be bad to have a gap on your resume, and all these things that people were telling me.
Yeah.
But I decided to really follow my heart and take the time off. I ended up taking a full year off,
Nice.
and I did a year of personal passion projects. I did yoga teacher training. I traveled. I actually started a travel blog.
Ah.
And through all of this, I really learned so much about myself. And you know what happened at the end of the day? When I decided I wanted to go back to work, I was able to find another job. So despite what people were telling me, it's okay to turn these setbacks. I turned the setback of getting laid off into a year of really pursuing my personal interests and passions and learning more about myself, and really fighting against all the misconceptions of how you need to have a job lined up before you leave one, and just really
Absolutely.
fighting all those myths to show that it is possible and you don't always have to follow the flow. And
Exactly.
I was able to turn this setback into actually what turned out to be one of the best years of my life so far. I had so much fun to really just focus on myself, and that also having experienced that layoff that first time, it actually made future layoffs a lot easier to survive and experience. And I didn't grieve as much because I had already experienced it once. And I think that's one of the things about when you normalize failures and you get in the practice of being able to be resilient and bounce back, that's how you can change, you can cut that grieving process or cut down that rebound time. You can cut it down because you are used to used to failing, which sounds
Yeah,
scary, but it's actually one of the best ways to grow.
it
um,
is. It
and
is.
if I hadn't been laid off, I wouldn't have experienced all these things, which made me grow in so many more ways than just my corporate career. And so yeah, so I just love talking about bouncing back from failure and really building that resilience muscle because that's how you learn and that's how you grow.
Oh, absolutely. I love your story. Thank you for sharing that with me because I think more people need to understand how when you take some time for yourself, there's nothing wrong with it, but you actually have to take the time for yourself. You can't just stuff yourself with unnecessary distractions if you're not really doing this self-love that you are trying to do at the end of the day. Because when you start this self-love process, you find out more things about yourself where it's like, you know what, I like this, so I like that. And some people, they've started that process and they've gone through layoffs and they've gone through just situations where things just happen, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
And they've ended up, while discovering themselves, they discovered their passion, created a
Yeah.
business, done so many great things. And there's still obstacles, there's still adversity coming at them and at yourself. But it's like you said, you build a tolerance, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
despite what people may think that, oh, you shouldn't want to build a tolerance on that. And not in all actuality, you do
Right.
because it's practice makes perfect. Like, okay,
Exactly.
now I know not to go there, but so now I go here. You know what I mean? It's
Exactly.
trial and error. You can't be afraid to fail because
Yes.
if you're afraid to fail, eventually you will fail, but then you realize, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. Exactly. It
Yeah.
wasn't that big of a deal. And I also loved how you talked about these social norms and how you went away from them and not to letting it consume your life. Because yes, you are absolutely right. Hearing that not having a job lined up right after leaving another one, yeah, that is a taboo. It's like, oh my goodness, what are you gonna do with your life? What's gonna happen? How are you gonna support? I mean, the endless amount of questions are there, but it's like once you made that peace within yourself, all of that becomes noise and you just keep going along and you'll eventually answer everyone's question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The more time passes, just like, okay, the best response that you can give someone is give me time. Just give me time. Let me prove it. Give me time. Don't ask questions how, when, where, what, whatever. Don't just give me time. I think that's the best response that you can give someone because why not? You know what I mean? Everything resolves with time. Everything gets answered with time. So it's just like give yourself that time to just embrace everything because that's what we got to do. We got to embrace the life as it comes at us. So I have a question to just throw everything off. What could be a superpower if you could have any superpower?
Oh, that's a good one. I think for me, I would love to be able to be anywhere like instantly.
Uh,
So for me, I love to travel. So being able to just be in a place to, travel to another country instantly and experience what's happening, or cut down that travel time
yeah.
to go anywhere, but be there to be able to experience it, or to go someplace and experience that experience, whatever it is, whether it's a destination or
An
an event.
event.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
I think that's a great superpower. I would love that type of superpower too, because it's like I can go to any major event that could be happening right now. It's like, you know what? I don't want to go to my local events. Let me go to Rio and join their Mardi Gras. You know what I mean? Let me go to Spain and do this. So it's just like that is something beautiful too. I think that would be a great superpower as well. So to start wrapping up the show, what can be some lasting words of wisdom that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
Yeah, I think for me, especially the type of clients I work with as a career clarity coach, is really thinking about what it is that you really want. And when it comes to, normalizing failures and setbacks, it's about forcing yourself to take risks. And by taking risks, you will eventually experience failures and setbacks, but that's how you grow. And sometimes when you take a risk, you may actually not fail. You find success. And so imagine if you hadn't taken that risk, you wouldn't have experienced that success or that growth. And so I definitely leave the word of advice that I tell people is to really take risks. And it doesn't always have to be a big giant risk, but even just small ones, and get in the habit of taking risks. And that allows you to build that resilience muscle when you do fail, and you can bounce back quickly from that. And the reason why I do say this is that a lot of times with the types of clients that I work with, when it comes to high achievers, we overachievers, you're so used to success that you forget that you also need to fail. And that fear of failure then keeps you stuck and you end up settling. And so
Yes.
that is the worst thing possible, is to settle for something that's that's unsatisfying or unfulfilling. And the key to kind of get over that is to take risks and experience the failures if they do come, but also keep in mind that it may not always be a failure. It can lead to success as well. So take those risks.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes, Alice. That's a great words, phrase, everything that you said, paragraph, essay, whatever people want to call it. I loved it because, man, people forget about taking risks because we will settle. Oh my goodness, how we are so, it's so sad to see people settle. And it's so sad when ourselves we settle because we are afraid of taking risks. And it's like we have to remind ourselves we can't be afraid of fear. We can't be afraid to take this risk. At least we will know. Having the knowledge is better than having the assumption because the assumption will play games with you, but having the knowledge of what you're going into, now you know. Now you know the truth because an assumption is a lie. An assumption is previous information given to you or previous knowledge or just something that you're just aware of, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
actual for that moment in time. You know what I mean? And we forget that. So remembering to take risks so you don't settle in life. I think to be honest, I think one of my biggest fears is settling because it's like there's so much the world you can get. It's like why not continue to take these risks? If it works, great. And if it doesn't, well, at least I know it didn't work out for me. And at least I know why it doesn't work out for me. But at least I tried. And
Yeah.
if more people tried in that way, oh my goodness, it would build that resilience. Goodness
Yeah.
gracious, Alice, that was such a great point. Thank you so much for giving us this time and your perspective. And if, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys want to know more about Alice, because why not? You know what I mean? Why not? Please check her out. I have her lovely photo with her website. So, boop, right there, just click right under, and you can find all of the great content that she has to offer the world so that you can continue on thinking. So, with that being said, bye.